What's up, guys? Today's video is going to feature a look at why some things work and why some don't. Specifically defense, but this time with some decent examples to get you thinking on how you could make use of something like this or design your own defense that produces good results. Enjoy the video, folks.
Let the lesson begin.
Alright guys, Akariss here, bringing you another Fire Emblem Heroes video. Today's video is going to talk about my defense team, why it works, what you can do to make something either similar or making it work as well. If you haven't watched my ARD replay videos, I'm going to be linking that not only in the description below in my playlist, but also above me, clickable, and I'm going to have some gameplay featured under me. So I'm going to cover the anima version of this defense, but I have been using variations of it in dark as well, even despite having not that 7th unit yet, but that's not really that important. Essentially, the 7th unit is just probably a mythic who just gives extra stats at the end of the day, so it's not that big of a deal. It's more about how the defense works and how you can replicate it in your own way, or just think of good fundamental defense techniques. Now, I have talked about this in previous videos, but I wanted to actually give a strong example of a defense that has given me like perfect defense rewards pretty much for over a month, almost 2, since Vault of Heavens, without any problems, because a team like this is fairly difficult for the average Vault of Heavens player to play into. Now, I say average because, as with all defenses, there are weaknesses and there's ways to beat it. I don't think there's a certain, like, any defense that you can make that has like a 100% win rate against every single player. That basically doesn't exist, because offense is favored over defense, but as long as you know good defense mechanics, AI and such, how that works on defense to put it to your best advantage, you'll come out on top on offense. Okay, so let's talk about the defense in detail. As you can see here, that is a restore trap. Well, you can't really see it, but essentially it is. But it makes use of some fundamental AI mechanics on making sure that restore works as often as possible. So this is really consistent in school weeks and dark and light shrine, bright shrine weeks, but that doesn't mean you can't use it outside of those weeks. And the biggest reason for that is because most people bring debuffs. I'd say 90% of the players that play into me bring debuffs. And why shouldn't you? It's usually a pretty big advantage unless you run into essentially this type of defense. But on top of that, common mythics have debuffs. So Naga comes with a chill in her B. Lumeria comes with sabotage speed, and Mila comes with sabotage attack. So you pretty much have like mythics, offense mythics that have some sort of debuffs. Of course, you might run into panic users, you might run into Tamari, for example. So there's plenty of debuffs littered all over offense. But on top of that, people do run common buildings on offense, even if it's not their bonus, like Panic Manor, Bright Shrine, and Dark Shrine. So to some extent, you'll get some value out of restore against most players. That's why a team like this is almost always consistent. Like you have to run into a player who consciously doesn't bring those debuffs, because even I do. I mean, and most of the time I just feel like if I run into this team, I will do my best to outperform it, because on most teams you play into, those debuffs are more beneficial. So how does it work? Of course, essentially, Nana is the initiator for this team, but she gets things going, and the reason for that is by creating high danger area. What I've done here is made sure that Nana threatens a huge amount of area. Not shown here, but if you take a look, 3 spaces under Reinhardt, 3 spaces under Nana, and because they're where the lightning trap is placed right now, the real one, Nana post restore on Reinhardt reaches into that position, covering basically almost all spaces. There is no one who doesn't essentially run like 6 units on offense. There's nowhere to hide if they bring their bonus and ladder and obviously fort. So you're pretty much threatening the full space there. This forces a turn 1 engage, or someone to gamble traps, or to create a choke point. That is essentially what you're trying to do, because most players, again, bring debuffs of some sort. But on top of that, it's very tactics room resistant, it's very isolation resistant, and I'll explain why in a moment. So the reason for that is if people bring like a tactics room, as shown here in this example, on Reinhardt, for example, Restore is going to go hit Reinhardt, and then his danger area is restored, which is great. So Tactics Room ends up not really working very much. But on top of that, Mirabilis here is running ground orders. Now that's a great thing to inherit to Mirabilis or whatever dancer you choose to put in between Nana and the unit beside, because that way Nana doesn't have to rely on her movement to get under Reinhardt for a restore and initiate that great danger area. A lot of the offense mythics, as long as you're using the right cavalry unit, which I'll cover again by the end of this video, some good candidates for this, as long as you're using a really good healer for restore and of course other good cavalries that can follow up on that, you are threatening almost all offense mythics. Stuff like Naga, Altina, Regan, Plumeria stand no chance taking hits from these units, and most players want to hide them as best as they can, which of course limits their play options and really makes it like very threatening, very dangerous for someone to play into a team like this. There's more components to it, but that is very important. Now, another common element here is that most players, including myself, run a fort in the first lane. So we're taking full advantage of the fact that you can't easily isolate Nana. And the reason for this is because on lane 1, if you put, let's say, Bridal Fjorm there, you get your turn 1 isolation, but you can't leave Bridal Fjorm in that position because Nana will have a kill on Bridal Fjorm. As long as you're using a good healer, like a good threatening healer like Veronica, Nana, Ethlyn, Forest with a bunch of speed, they will barrel down and just kill Bridal Fjorm. So you've already got your first kill if they choose to leave that isolation unit there. Isolation can work on Mira or Reinhardt to some extent, but not always. Because if you, for example, isolate Reinhardt and Mirabilis here is debuffed, Nana still chooses to take the tile under because defense tiles are priority for restore in that position. They want to take a defensive position, but in this case we use it offensively. And then that still extends her effective range. So even if she can't restore Reinhardt, she can still get onto Mira, for example. Or, trying to isolate, let's say, Mira, well, Eldigan will also be able to dance Nana should Nana go into that position. So you see how it's like the pieces are coming together. But what is very important, and I guess for both Dark and Anima here, is making sure that your mythics contribute to this strategy in one form or another, which is good old Duma yet again. Duma and Cyros both actually contribute to a strategy like this very well, and so does Mirabilis. Ironically, Lif and Thrasier don't contribute as much. They're okay, I think. You can probably fit them in here no problem because speed is still good, and in the case of Thrasier, she can provide some sort of nukes to some extent. But Duma has 3 attack bonus, Upheaval for 7 damage on turn 1, Cyros provides 3 attacks. So effectively you can give this team 6 attack overall, 10 HP, and it's up to 15 with Mira, which is crazy high amount of offensive stats that units like Reinhardt really get a lot more damage out of that because of the extra attack coming out. Upheaval doing a start plus 7 unmitigated damage, there's nothing they can do. So someone like Duma ends up really going well into this team, even more so than something like Thrasier. So as I mentioned, Nana here is my choice for a Cav healer with Restore, but that's because it's my only F2P option. I honestly think, and I'll cover it later, healers like Veronica and Elise are actually better in that slot if you can get some good merges out of them and really try to make her snipe a lot of units, or at least create some crazy good amount of pressure. But units like Elise and Veronica actually also help out their team by debuffing the enemy teams and buffing up their own in some ways, which is crazy good. So I'm kind of doing it like an F2P way here with Palm Staff, and that's lowering enemy attack and speed. That does help. It does help more than you think it would. And I'm using attack speed solo A and seal, which isn't even the most ideal investments. ARD attack speed in A 100% is better, which you can get from codes, but attack speed solo is probably the best in seal. So you see I'm still effectively missing a bunch of stats or pressure that could come out of Nana in this example. As I mentioned earlier, Eldigan is, or it can be any other dancer, but I like Eldigan a lot in both seasons. Like, he's not only a melee counter, he has high HP, and he has great defense, and he's blue, so he counters red tanks or red units fairly well, those that are melee hitting, if he can get in and start fighting them, because with a Slaying Lance and Ignis, this guy is going to be threatening an Ignis in most cases. Like, he auto wins against Altina, and he threatens other good melee tanks that otherwise you know, might be able to fully clear this team. Like melee red, of course, I'm talking, because of that Ignis potentially threatening it. Now, of course, I give him HP just so he's fairly resistant to Bridal Fjorm. With 3 Mythics here, he reaches 70. Again, that's the idea you got to do. I would still suggest trying to create, like, whatever dancer you put in that position, try to make him resistant to Bridal Fjorm if possible. Like, maybe a duo unit like Duo Peony might actually be better than Eldigan here. That's fine. My choice of duo in this team is Linja, just because that's all I got in terms of merges, and I think most people could put Linja here effectively, but to be honest, Linja hasn't contributed amazingly to the team, or at least visually from what I can tell, which I'll talk about in a moment, of course. So you'll see how the pieces all come together here and effectively create this big danger area, limits the amount of options that a player can play into it. I've seen players who throw their units onto the defense tile, but it doesn't work, and I'll tell you why. So, a couple of reasons. One, you limit the actual like support that you can throw behind. You can't like put a Lancina behind, you can't put Flame behind, you can't really put anyone supporting a unit onto the tile very well because there's so much range coverage there. There's no way to like block that. Well, obstruct, I guess, but you don't really see that, so yeah. But essentially, you can't really throw a unit onto the defense tile and take advantage of it on turn 1 because of the restore pressure and just high danger area in general. So people are forced to use max range, and your own units take advantage of the defense tile in this case. So what I want to really talk about is why can't someone just put a tank there, and what exactly kind of key components can you use to make this work? So let's start into just a sample look at the defense team. Very important that whoever you want ideally to get hit by restore is on slot 6. I've covered this in the restore AI guide. You should go review that if needed. It's going to be above me in a moment. But yeah, that's what you want to do for sure. The secondary option would probably be in slot 5 and maybe slot 4 and so forth. Put your dancers like in the first 2 slots, because restore will not always get a kill. Like, she's not always going to go end up kills, so you want her to make sure she restores very important targets. Key components to making sure this works though is 1, sturdy impact of some form or mirror impact, ideally on a range unit, and wind sweep or fire sweep of some sort. You want those components on the defense team because it's hard for a single tank to just jump on a tile and be able to deal with both effectively without getting overrun. And that's where we go into this. In my team here, we have Linja running both impact and wind sweep, and that's a weakness, to be honest. If you can distribute that among different units, that's ideal. But for me, that's how I do it, and it seems to work pretty well, because if someone without Null Sea Disrupt hits tile, Linja's going to start hitting that unit plenty of times and chipping down on it really hard. So I've made a little bit of a list here on units you can consider. The blue star is the premium options, the 5-star is the best options I feel of the F2Ps, and the Cav healer is running the restore. The 5-star options, Legendary Lilina, Lif, Lyn, and Selena, I feel, are the best in this role for where Reinhardt is right now. They're not necessarily better than Reinhardt because they just all have different matchups in one way or another. Lyn's Seke Blessing is still really good. It's effectively wind sweep without a speed check and without limiting your own double, and I still appreciate that out of Lyn, especially if you can combine that with something like Budding Bow, potentially Spendthrift Bow as well. Those are really good. It's something very unique to Lyn, and it does make her a pretty solid candidate there. Be careful not to have too much colorless there though, because that is a little bit of a problem. As you can see on my team here, I have Duma, Lyn, Nana, and if I had like Lyn, I'd have 4 colorless. That's too many colorless. You'd open up your team to getting swept by Raven Tomes. Okay, so the F2P options, obviously Reinhardt is going to scale really well with attack boosts if you can give it to him through the Mythics or Resplendent or whatever. Plus, if you invest into him highly, he's going to be able to do that. But bulk is very important. So attack, defense, push, I feel, are better than stuff like Death Blow. If you can get that, potentially attack, res, push, or even ARD attack speed and giving him wind sweep. That's actually totally legit as options. Wrath, fire sweep. Don't let him get matched up against Altina. Always fire sweep, maybe wind sweep. Same idea with Python, And finally, Cecilia. Same idea, run Windsweep. And because she has that effective Raven Tome, she's going to have great matchups against most Mythics and just general coverage on your team. For example, my team here has no green, so something like Cecilia would complement the team pretty well, plus Raven, and with Windsweep, she doesn't really care about Ultina to an extent, of course. So, Cav healers, like I mentioned earlier, I feel the best restores right now, the best restore Cav healers are no doubt Veronica and Elise, but not because of their offensive stat spread, but because they also provide great preference staffs that also support the team in one way or another. Your teammates get stronger by having those staff healers around. Nana and Forest are the F2P options. If you use Forest, you want to stack a little bit more speed. If you use Nana, you want to stack a bit more attack. I'd say that pretty much covers how this team works and why it has worked for me. Again, I implore you to go watch the replay videos and get like a pure visual of it, but key components to sum it up. Danger area is good. Taking advantage of people's lack of AI knowledge, in this case being restore, is very powerful. Taking advantage of people bringing a lot of buildings or bringing debuffs is very good. And finally, bulk and nuking power combined on units like this will bring you successes. That's pretty much it, folks. If you made it to the end of this video, then thank you so much. As always, you guys are amazing. Thumbs up if you haven't already. Sub to the channel. Those always help me out. Thanks, guys. Join the Twitch and Discord for further discussions. I'll see you in the next one. Much love. Peace.
It's over.